How's it going, you guys, and welcome back to the channel. As we all may know, Jim Carrey is known for his over-the-top style of comedy, and it's very stupid at times, but it can still manage to entertain. Most of his films seem to follow that style, and even when some of them failed, he still managed to entertain the audience and always have them excited for his next project. However, there was one film in particular where a lot of people were just confused because it took such a different approach than they were used to. Today, we're talking about The Cable Guy.
When the truth is found to be light.
The Cable Guy, directed by Ben Stiller, is a dark comedy film that stars Jim Carrey and Matthew Broderick. It follows the story of an antisocial cable guy, Chip Douglas, who has lived his whole life staring at the TV, and his only goal is to try and find a friend. One of his clients, Stephen Kovac, has faked having an interest in Chip's line of work, which causes Chip to take it to heart and make an effort to make a friend out of Stephen. Despite Chip's efforts to make a new friend, this pushes Stephen to express his disinterest in friendship, and what follows is the psychotic Chip stopping at nothing to ruin Stephen's life. The Cable Guy is a very interesting film, considering that it's Jim Carrey's first film where he ever got a mixed reception from it. Many people were against the fact that the film decided to take the darker approach to its comedy and its story, and they were even more surprised to see that Jim Carrey would take on a role that's so villainous. I think it's worth noting that the late Chris Farley was set to originally play this role, and the film was going to be more lighthearted and fun, with Chip playing the role of an annoying friend. However, eventually when Jim Carrey took over this role, he was part of the decision to make the film with a much darker tone, and it was his decision to give a psychotic edge to Chip. Of course, Carrey had already played the villainous role of the Riddler in Batman Forever, but that film's tone was already set to be more lighthearted when Schumacher took over from Tim Burton. He still had that comedic and lighthearted charm that audiences were used to, and I personally think his portrayal of the Riddler is one of the best.
Batman? Batman, you say? Coming for you?
There's also Carrey's portrayal of the Mask, where he plays more of an anti-hero role, and if you know anything about the Mask comic book series as well as the film's history, then you know that we could have gotten a much darker film with Carrey, and it would have been one of his first to receive a darker tone. I've already talked about the Mask on this channel before, and if you want to go check it out, I talk a lot more details in that video.
Okay.
Going back to The Cable Guy, despite it being one of the films that was mostly hated by audiences when it first released, it seems like it's reached cult status over the years. Viewing this film from a modern day perspective, I really gotta ask the question, did it really deserve all that hate when it was first released? Is it actually more clever than we realized? Well, I'm here to talk about it today. This is my review of The Cable Guy. Of course, as always, I think Jim Carrey is probably the best part about this movie. Despite the film's dark tones, he could still manage to make me laugh throughout this movie. Of course, he's got some of his classic style of comedy throughout this film, but he also dives into his edgier side when he makes references to Silence of the Lambs and even participates in a game of Porno Password.
Peanut.
And what I think the movie does best is taking the usual stalker tropes you see in movies and adding a bit of a comedic spin with them. And don't get me wrong, considering that Carrey is the one being the stalker in this movie, it can still get a little bit disturbing at times. Of course, the jokes are pretty hit or miss when it comes to this film, and there's some scenes where the comedy can drag out for a while, but I don't think that's really the most important thing about this film. The movie's main focus is to understand what it's like to deal with a stalker, and in this case, it's with Chip. We understand that he's a lonely man and that all he wants is to have a meaningful friendship with someone, but he hasn't learned to express his feelings correctly. Being subjected to staring at a TV and being trapped in his own world, we also learn that his troubled past is what formed him into the man that he is. And as a kid, I think the film does a great job in showing you why Chip ends up doing the things he does to Stephen. And mixed in with the abandonment issues that Chip is facing, the film did a great job in making a character that you can dislike, but also feel really bad for. You're able to see that he will do whatever it takes to help out Stephen, especially in his love life. But it's just done in all the wrong ways, which forces him to be rejected, and this is what pushes Chip to ruin Stephen's life. Of course, Carrey is bound to overplay himself like he usually does with any film he's in, really. But at the same time, it started to make me feel like this film was way ahead of its time. Seeing the things that Carrey does in this film, I can understand that audiences back then probably would have found it harder to relate to something like this, but in the present day where the internet has taken over and with the surge of online stalkers, people trapped in their own world, and Karens, Carrey is basically the embodiment of all these throughout the movie, and it may not have been funny back when the movie was released, but through a modern point of view, this is straight up hilarious.
Oh, Billy.
And another thing that I found interesting about this film is how Ben Stiller managed to include himself in this story. There's a little subplot throughout this film which shows Stiller playing the role of twins, with one of them being charged for the murder of the other. It was an interesting inclusion to say the least, and it seemed like it wouldn't be going anywhere. Throughout this movie, we get to follow the court case of Stiller's character, and it really seems like it's just there to fill in runtime, but near the end of the movie, we get to reach the verdict part of the trial. And when everybody's watching on their screens at home, eventually, the service gets cut out. The commentary on how people were so dependent on TV didn't seem to make this inclusion so pointless. Like we saw with Carrey earlier, his mental state was developed from watching so much TV and with his abandonment issues. And here in The Cable Guy, we basically get to see how addicted the world is to their TV, and eventually when they lose it, they lose their minds. And it really made me think about how nowadays we're so dependent on the internet for everything, whether that be looking at the news, for convenience sake, for social media. I mean, you name it, the internet is basically everything into one digital world. And imagine how crazy we would be if it just went out for one day. I mean, what can I say? Despite the things that people have said about this movie in the past, I think it's one of Jim Carrey's most fascinating films on his resume. Obviously, it does stand with some issues, such as the comedy sometimes not working. Carrey can be a little bit annoying at times in his performance, and I honestly think that this film played it too safe a few times, and it could have been a little bit darker. But I think where the film prevails is how it deals with issues on loneliness, as well as the undertones of a troubled childhood. Chip Douglas isn't a perfect man, and you can see deep down inside that he truly has a good heart, but because of all the experiences that he had growing up, as well as all the rejection he faced throughout his life trying to make new friends, you can definitely see why he acts the way he does. I think that's what made Cable Guy one of the most iconic Jim Carrey movies, and I don't think it deserves all the hate that it may still get today. I know that now people are really used to watching films with an edge to them, but I don't think it was wrong for Carrey to tread on new ground back then. I think Carrey changing up his shtick really showed how much of a talented man he is, and how much he loves to entertain people. I'm sure that if the film was released in the lighthearted style it was meant to be in, it could have been received well back then, but who knows if it would hold up today. If you haven't gotten the chance to watch Cable Guy yet, I would definitely recommend it, especially if you're really into those edgy styles that they put in movies. So, a dark comedy that seems to be more clever than we realized? I'm gonna go ahead and give Cable Guy 7 out of 10 cable boxes.
Cable Guy!
If you happen to get around to this film, I would definitely recommend watching it twice, because the first time you may not like it as much, but the second time around, I think you'll find more enjoyment in it. But anyways, I'd like to know, what do you guys think of The Cable Guy? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you not care to watch it? I'd love to know in the comments below. And I'd also like to know if you really think that this movie is an underrated gem that we never really thought was clever until now. If you made it this far in the video, I'd appreciate it if you leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel for some more future movie content. Thank you guys for joining me in this review. Look forward to more very soon. And until the next one, you guys, I'll see you later.